YouTube? Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully you guys are doing well today. Well, this is a quick video in the morning. This is an urgent video because we have a moderate risk for severe weather. All hazards are on the table, including the threat of tornadoes, and even right now, if I look over here, I can actually see a few strong thunderstorms already developing over Illinois over here. I do think these have a severe thunderstorm warning on them. They are, if I can see them from this distance, then that's pretty telling to me. But yep, there those severe thunderstorm warnings are right there. These little small yellow polygons. Can't go live right now because I have to go to work, but we will be going live later today as conditions are expected to only deteriorate further, and we could see a large-scale severe and tornado outbreak. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty here. We also have to keep an eye on Wednesday because that's been up to an enhanced risk. We'll look at that map, but we won't go into the details with that today. That'll be more so tonight and into tomorrow. But here is the overall view of our moderate risk here. From Peoria to almost Des Moines even, we have the moderate risk. I don't know why I keep getting marginal moderate mixed up. And then there's a secondary moderate risk that stretches from Springfield, Missouri, all the way down towards the Texas-Oklahoma border and into the Arklatex here. Both of these areas have 15% hatched risk for tornadoes, and those hatch risk even stretch into the enhanced risk, which is the 10% area in the yellow. Some areas that are in the yellow, unfortunately, we see Little Rock in the picture once again, parts of eastern Iowa in the picture again. Peoria is in that enhanced risk with the hatched color. Springfield, Illinois is in there, as well as Hannibal, Missouri, and areas towards northern Missouri. We'll see what ends up happening, whether or not these two areas end up connecting, but this is a risk area for strong to potentially even violent tornadoes with our current setup. We went over a lot of the details with the setup last night in last night's video, so I'll refer that link to you in the top right corner towards the beginning of the video. But that being said, tornadoes are not the only threat today. We do have wind, even though it's not a hatch risk, that can easily change. In fact, I'm almost expecting it to change. You could see an upgrade to a moderate risk on that as well. So that would be a 45% area. I would expect to see a hatched risk further off to the east with this, if anything, but we'll have to watch things develop throughout the day. Then the hail threat is significant up towards the northern end of the spectrum. Not to say that we can't get significant hail inside the slight risk area, which stretches all the way from as far north as maybe even La Crosse and Milwaukee and Wisconsin, all the way down towards Austin, Texas here. So any of these areas in between, not only are we looking for the threat of potentially some strong, maybe even violent tornadoes and strong damaging winds, we could also see some hail. So that's the hazards that we have going on today. Do I think we'll go up to a high risk? I can't tell. Those are really hard to predict. That is a call that's strictly made by the Storm Prediction Center here. What we can do though on here is we can take a look at the composite reflectivity and get a timeline of when these storms will fire here. Been waiting on this model here to update, but as of right now, I think we might actually have to go all the way back towards the 06 run, which is about 3 hours back, but we'll have a better scan for later into the evening, which is when the concern really starts to pick up. So we're looking on the northern slight risk right now. So I'm skipping this about 3 hours to current time, and you can even see already there is a little bit of an initialization here. By 10Z, we do see a couple of storms start to form. I expect these to be right at the cusp of severe limits, but the worst of the weather is far from beginning really at this point. So we get into the early afternoon hours. That's when I think the first storms might really start to develop, but this is going to be over towards the colder sector here. So severe potential might be a little bit more limited. We could see a hazard type based off of this sounding. In fact, there it is right there. But look how cold the surface temperatures are. The storm is elevated. Not a big time tornado threat with this at all. In fact, it's almost a non-tornado threat. But you could definitely see hail out of a setup like this. Storm is elevated. And cold core storms are often can be some pretty gnarly hail producers. So that's going to be the threat early into the afternoon. Once we get further along here, though, once we get to about 23 to 00Z, which would be about 7-8 o'clock Eastern time around my time frame. By this point, we'll be going live. This is when we start seeing these discrete supercells popping up, and these are the ones we need to be concerned with. We start seeing this little confluence line begin, not confluence line, we start seeing this line of storms begin to develop here. These have that supercellular shape. Even some of them are starting to form a little bit of hook type shape, which is indicative of a rotating thunderstorm. And it's those storms we have to watch for the potential of tornadoes. We're waiting to see what happens with these other storms over here. Like I said, this is definitely looking more and more like a nocturnal event, which would be pretty bad news, because not only on Friday did we have tornadoes during the day, we had a lot more tornadoes at night, and I think those were the ones that were a little bit more dangerous and caused a lot more damage and destruction and harm in general. Here we are looking at this storm to the south here in Missouri, and look at the parameters at this point. In fact, this has a significant tornado parameter close to an 8. So this is a very scary looking sounding here. Hordeograph looks insane. The storm relative felicity is off the charts here. We're seeing 620 meters per second squared, meters squared per second squared. So that is a very, this environment is has a lot of spin to it. In other words, that's basically what this means whenever you see whenever I talk about values like storm relative felicity here. So main thing to do here is make sure that you are prepared with a plan of action in case a tornado warning gets issued. More than likely a tornado watch will get issued earlier in the evening, so by that point you should already have your plan in place. That's the best advice I can really give you. That being said, by the time we get later into the evening, here comes that second round of storms. Line of storms ends up forming through central Missouri into Illinois and even into Iowa by the early morning hours. So we could see a multitude of severe storms heading throughout this region into the overnight and really even into tomorrow. So we could see some really nasty storms before we get into the early afternoon Wednesday, which is crazy to think about. Normally with the lack of daytime heating, these storms will not be as impressive. That could be as a result of a capping inversion that's in place here, but if this breaks earlier, this could cause a lot more problems as well. The complication with this system is the fact that we have a capping inversion in place. If that cap does not hold up, these storms will fire earlier and there could be a longer span of severe weather. But if it holds later, because I do eventually think this will break, we may be able to limit the tornado threat just a little bit. Let's hope that is the case. I don't know if we'll get out of it entirely. I'm honestly doubtful. I'm just being honest. But maybe we could avoid some of the worst of it. Nonetheless, make sure you have your plan in place regardless in the event that a tornado warning ends up being issued for your area, because these storms are going to be a lot like Friday if things begin to develop with that cap breaking. That being said, we're going to go down to the south now and take a look at our weather, at our severe potential there. It's pretty much a similar deal. Forcing isn't really going to be quite as strong over here, so it might take a little longer for these storms to form, but it's a pretty similar deal. We start watching over towards Texas in the late evening hours into the overnight. Start out with a line of storms. This doesn't look as impressive as I've seen, so this could be limited in nature, but we do have to watch towards Wednesday for another chance of severe storms. But there might be some good news here. I don't really see anything that leads me to think that this has an immediate tornado threat. This might be a little bit more on the marginal side. might be taking a trend in the right direction here. These storms look linear, so it's going to be harder for them to produce violent tornadoes. Not to say that it can't happen, but compared to what I've seen over the last couple of days, we've seen a bit of a downtrend. Storm has plenty of, I'm trying to find the decape actually. The storm has a decent bit of decape here, so we still have to look out for damaging winds. But it looks like we may see a decrease in the tornado threat here. Hopefully this trend continues. Hopefully this holds up. The threat seems to be a little bit more impressive here to the south on Wednesday, so we'll keep an eye and see what on this and see what happens. Hopefully, like I said, nothing really occurs with this, because these areas have been hit pretty hard over the last couple of weeks. We don't really want to see them continue to get hit. And then after this storm system here, we might get a little bit of a break in the action. So the greatest threat seems to be more so to the north than anything else right now. So we'll quickly look at the significant tornado perimeter, and we'll get this video done because I got to get ready to go. So one thing to note with the significant tornado perimeter, it shows the ability to have tornadic conditions in your area, but this does not mean that a tornado is going to form. This sometimes will pop up in areas that don't even have thunderstorms in the forecast, like right over here where we have these 0.6s and 1s and 2s. Over towards Ohio, we are not worried about you tonight. Maybe late into the evening that will be a little bit more of a concern, but I think tomorrow will be your threat. So anything that you see within the time frame between 06Z, I wouldn't be concerned with it. But these are some very nasty looking values that we're seeing right here before we get into the 8 o'clock hour. Oh, this is almost maxed out. Good grief. This has high cape values around it too, though, so maybe some storms and convection will fire around it to where maybe we don't have to, maybe this threat will be limited. Like I said, I do think the cap does break, and when it does, we could see a long and intense evening depending on parameters here. Thankfully, one thing that I've noted here that in these soundings is that there's not a lot of analog matches, which is good, which is a positive sign here, but nonetheless these values are very high and very dangerous. So again, this is gonna have to be closely monitored here. We will be going live later this evening, so hopefully you join me in that. If you know anyone in these areas, definitely share this video. Hit that like button, of course, as well. And if you're new to the channel, of course, subscribe, as we're looking to get this information out to as many people as we can today. We're hoping that we see a continual downtrend, especially towards the south, but up north, it's a pretty similar deal. But that being said here, it's the end of the video here for me. I'll see you guys this afternoon. Again, share the video, subscribe if you haven't, and then of course, if you're in an area of interest today especially, let me know in the comments. But this has been Tire Metalhead Weatherman. I'll see you guys this afternoon. Take care and have a good day. Let's stay safe.